You can start. Aviad, you can start.
Hello.
He dropped and he's right back.
Okay. So I'm back. Okay, welcome everyone. This is a very unique event as we meet our partners globally, at least a lot of them. And it's also broadcasted in a live stream. So there might be lots of people watching us and hearing us. So my name is Aviad Goz. I know everyone in this group, which is in the Zoom group. And I'm the founder of N.E.W.S Navigation International. And throughout my life, professional life, I was always very interested in what stops people, teams, and organizations from fulfilling their potential and reaching what they could reach. So a little while ago, I published an article, and that article was called Stuck in the Center. And the background to that article is that I've been working and coaching recently a few people from global American corporates. And I found that most of them that I worked with were very much focused on self-promotion, political battles inside their organization, developing their own private kingdoms in the organization, ego battle, who controls who, lots of irrelevant development. And I've seen that wherever that happens, there is what I can call some measure of organizational, I would call it even sickness, and going down in performance. So really what I'm here today to do is more like a message rather than teaching, because I've seen this so often recently. And so I really want to share with you my view on that. So we are here, especially our partners, licensees, to create global impact through leadership. And I think it's today more essential than ever, because the highest impact you can get globally is through leaders. And if you manage to transform one leader, the impact can be on hundreds or thousands of people. And the state of leadership globally, as I see it, both in organizations, but also in politics and other places, is really not at its best. So this session is dedicated to why leaders get stuck now and what can we do about this. So let's start with some global view of why leaders are stuck now and what can we do to help and promote. So the first thing is that if you look at the global current situation, I think what we see, and is not much spoken about or not much researched, is what I would call post-corona breaking down. and it continues. I think if you look globally, you see so many things breaking down, from mindsets to relationships to companies to structures to even religious institutions. So we as if left the corona behind us, but I think the breaking down and dissolving effect of post-corona continues. I will stop sharing for a moment and just ask the people present here, who of you experienced in the last 2 years various breaking downs of relationship, need to change your career, need to recalculate your direction, breaking down of structures? Can you just put your hand up if this happened to you, one of those? Okay. So I see lots of you, and I can share with you that personally I experienced it as well, both in relationship and in structures and companies that I'm in charge with and clients. So there is a lot of that breaking down that continues. Okay. So if we look at what's happening, and I think to look at the context, to look at the global picture is important in order to understand what's happening to leadership today. So if you look outside organizations, you see lots of chaos, breaking down of structures, disruptions, and I think you all disappeared. Wow, they disappeared.
No, Aviad, you are pinned, so everybody everybody can see.
Can you see me? Can you see the presentation? Hello?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay. So outside organizations, we see chaos, breaking down of structures, disruptions, and a lot of unpredictability in markets and economies. That happens a lot. If we look inside companies and organizations, we see lack of engagement, a lot of employee mobility, and need to change constantly business strategies. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think that does to leaders? What does it do to leaders, this external constant disruption and internal lack of engagement? Anyone wants to say from our global team?
I can share.
Yes, please.
I think it creates, well, it creates many things, but I think it's a lot of leaders lately, all this resulted in shifting priorities. I've noticed with leaders shifting priorities, like reevaluation of priorities, like people talk about the great resignation, but I like to call it the great reevaluation of values, which leads to the great resignation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you so much. What does it do to leaders? This ongoing shifting situation and unpredictable situation. Anyone else?
I'd like to share, Aviad. I think at least I can talk for the region that I represent, which is India. And since most of you know, the majority of talent that's leveraged from this part of the world, I think a bigger shift for most of the leaders in India has been a paradigm shift in itself. It was very hard pre-COVID for people to even imagine that how can resources sit at respective homes or wherever and get to work. But during and post-COVID, they've realized that remote working or hybrid working is going to be the norm and the new normal. That in itself was a huge paradigm shift for them to adopt.
I fully agree. So thank you. And I would like to present what I think happens to a lot of leaders now. I think a lot of leaders that I work with, that I talk with, are actually what we call being stuck. Okay? They recalculate what to do. There is a stress, working harder for reaching the same results. There's unclarity, confusion in a lot of organizations and a lot of leadership structures. I read some studies recently. About 60% of leaders or managers say that they are not connected to the organizational strategy. About 25% plan this year to change their job and move on. 40% already did it in the last year or two. So there's a lot of this shifting and being stuck and being recalculating people's course, direction, what they do next. So a lot of people are in crossroads, a lot of leaders, and I think it impacts leadership quite dramatically. And one of the things that happens a lot is that I still see a lot of leaders using old methods that no longer work, like top-bottom dictation, like no sharing, no participation, very high pressure. And I think this is part of what is happening globally now with leaders. And this idea of being stuck is with me for many years, because for many years I did the research of how individuals, leaders, teams, and organizations get stuck. That gave birth to the N.E.W.S compass. And the N.E.W.S compass speaks about 4 directions in which, in this case, leaders and teams can get stuck, but also 4 directions of how to evolve and move forward. So usually, historically, when a leader doesn't have a clear north, it means that they don't see a clear future. They don't see a clear direction. There's no clear vision. If they are stuck in the East, it means that they are not engaged. They are not driven. They are not motivated. If they are stuck in the West, it usually means that their planning, their execution is not working as it should. And if they are stuck in the South, it means that they are stuck in old stories, old practices, comfort zones that don't allow them to move forward. So for years, what we did, we worked with leaders to analyze and understand in which of the 4 directions they are stuck, and then help them move forward, both individually as leaders, but also for their teams and for the organizations. And we used this compass very successfully in the last 16 years, and we navigated with it, helped navigate so many leaders, so many teams, so many organizations globally in over 40 countries. And the results were outstanding. So if I look today into these 4 directions and ask myself, in these 4 directions of the compass, where are leaders stuck now at this point in this global situation? Here are some things that I discovered speaking with lots of leaders and managers. In the North, I think a lot of people, a lot of leaders don't have future visibility. And so there's very often changes in strategy, starting from the top and very often not cascaded all the way down. And also at the top, but definitely inside the organization, this creates a lot of confusion, okay? No visibility and frequent changes in strategy. In the East, we see globally that also leaders have a phenomenon of lack of motivation, lack of engagement, resulting in a lot of burnout. In the West, in a lot of organizations that went through layoffs, cutting resources, there is too much to do with too little, okay? There's lack of resources, and that's created a lot of stress for a lot of leaders. Again, the amount of leaders which are stressed or report being stressed is huge. And in the South, currently we see leaders being locked into past stories and past practices, which means that no growth is really possible. So we coach leaders, we train leaders, we work with teams, we navigate teams and organizations. But I urge you, those of us who work with leaders, to look to see if the people that you work with don't have one of those current areas where they are stuck and they really need help and work to be done with them. So the type of work that we've been doing, and we still do, for leaders is the following. So if we look in the North, I think more than ever before, there's a need to work with leaders about their authentic direction of greatness. I think a lot of people woke up post-COVID to realize that the work they've been doing for years is not exactly their greatness or their mission in life. And this creates in a lot of people deep wish to move and explore where they're moving to. So I believe that our work with authentic direction of greatness is key at this time. And then, of course, to help them to choose the best path for them and for their team. In the East, the work to be done now with leaders is how to re-engage their team and create team culture together. I think together is a core element at this time, and working with people to create together with them the culture of the team, what's important, the values, and reaching an agreement and a co-creation about that is really significant. I think in the West, the navigation work now with leaders is, beside effective planning and execution, is to have some kind of accountability heartbeats. I think a lot of teams need this kind of, some of them daily, some of them weekly, accountability sessions, meetings to keep on track, even if strategy changes, even if the whole organization changes, to keep on track with what I would call accountability heartbeats. And in the South, I think a lot of the work now is to break through old stories, narratives, and limits, and to introduce new empowering. Because again, a lot of teams are confused, are discouraged. And I think the work with the leaders and with teams is how to break through these very blocking stories and narratives and to introduce much more empowering narratives and stories. And I think that's definitely a work of leadership at this time. So the results that we see wherever we do this type of work is greater clarity, greater engagement, regaining capacity, personal growth, meaning, and better connection to the organization and to the team. So this is like, this navigation work is really crucial at this time for leaders in this very confusing, uncertain time. And yet, and we had amazing results, you know, helping to create strategies. Where there were no strategies, to go bottom up and create strategies in organizations, to help teams bond together in various organizations, to bring people after layoffs and after budget cuts to re-engage and regain confidence and move forward. And yet, because we do a lot of transformation work in companies, I really feel that all this work that we've been doing, that we are still doing, still there is something missing in what leaders need now in order to move and transform. And we find that to transform organizations currently, unless the leaders themselves go through personal transformation, leadership transformation, it doesn't really work. So I'd like to pose a question here and ask you, those in the Zoom group, what do you think is the factor that is still missing in transforming people, leaders today? Beyond helping them in the north, east, west, south, any idea, anyone? What is the missing factor? What is missing in helping deeper, much deeper transformation? Please offer your views. Yes, Aaron.
I believe that on this journey, many leaders have really strayed away from their authentic self. We get so caught up in achieving, obtaining, and accumulating these awards, these trophies, these different goals that are set in front of us, that we really can steer away from who we truly are as a person, as a member of society. And I think that to really start a transformation revolution, we have to go back in, really deep into the core of the individual.
I think that's a very, very good point, Aaron. Thank you. I think it's part of what is deeply needed. Anyone else? Walter, I see you're ready to speak.
Yes, Aviad, thank you. Definitely, the purpose have to be clear in what we want to do. And there is a very big difference between management and leadership. You need to really have passion for people, for the development of others, to create really real relationships and not transactions. And we can work with them in the north and in the east, because when you go deeper in and you find yourself, you discover your real mission in life, and then you can align and be a good leader. But if you don't get there, you will never. You could manage things and do transactions and get some results, but in order today to get real results, you need to really develop others and really want to create and to contribute to other people's life. I think that's the clue.
Thank you, Walter. I knew you would nail it because I think very, very close to what you think. And
Daniel would like to share.
Daniel, please.
Yeah, thank you, Aviad. Good morning. Well, I just have one word about the leaders that I have been in contact with in the last years. And I think a lack of, maybe you asked a factor, I think it's a lack of self-confidence, Aviad, because due to the global situation, most of the leaders feel concerned about the future, about how to develop the team, but they forget that they need to improve the self-confidence. I see this as a good factor that can be addressed maybe through the N.E.W.S and through the thought, using N.E.W.S methodology, but I think that's a good factor for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Paddy, do I see your hand up?
Yes, Aviad, you did. I think working in my region, one of the aspects that I would like to call out is lack of patience in these leaders. They want change to happen as of yesterday. So there's a lot of impatience in them for things to transform. So they fail to understand that transformation is a process. And they want things to happen like as if we have a magic wand to touch and they get to transform. I see that as one of the critical asks when we go to organizations in terms of how soon can you bring about the change, the desired change.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Paddy. So I'd like to introduce a new term, which is to do with, if we have 4 directions, then obviously there is a center. Okay? And I think the center or the core is something very important in leadership. So for me, beyond all the answers you gave, which are true, and there's a lot of need for leaders to develop themselves and to transform themselves to allow transformation around them. But I'd like to bring into the N.E.W.S system the idea of what's at the center. What's at the center of your leadership? So I'd like to ask you all for a moment to think about what is for you at the center. Usually we would put in the center those things which are the most significant for us. It's, if you like, the raison d'etre, the reason to do what we do at core. And I think it's time to look at the center of leadership. And I think at the center of leadership, there is the issue of how people perceive leadership, how they even think about what leadership is. Not just think theoretically, but also practically. And I'd like you for a moment, because I know a lot of you are leaders, people that we talk to here, think about what is for you the center of leadership. What's at the heart of it? What is at the core of it? Because that influences dramatically everything that you do. So I give you 2 or 3 seconds just to contemplate what is for you at the center, at the heart of it, at the core of leadership. And again, I know that usually we don't go with outlines to this depth, but if we want to help transform leaders, that will also transform organizations. I think we need to look at the core of it, the center of it. So I just wanted to bring up this very long-standing question of what leadership is and what it is not. Okay? So, of course, there are thousands of answers to these questions. But I'd like to share what it is for me and what it is not for me, and why work at the center with leaders is so, so necessary. So for me, leadership is, first of all, the ability to get people from where they are to where they can be. Okay? Both internally in their growth and both externally in what they are able to perform, achieve. It's definitely to take them beyond their current limits if you lead people. It's about influencing and empowering people to grow and develop, increase their capacity, contribution, increase their ability to create impact, to be more, to create more. That's for me at the heart of leadership. And what is for me not leadership, which is again what I've seen recently in a lot of work with leaders, leadership is not about self. It's not about self-focus, power games, forgetting what you try to lead people towards. It's not about me and my promotion only. It's not. And although it's very simple, this idea, you still find that lots of leaders are what I would say stuck in the center. Stuck in the center would mean to be stuck with self and self-glorification and self-achievement and self-promotion as a core and the center of leadership. And I think we got used to leaders like this. And it might even look to us normal and obvious, but it's not. So my analogy for that, when someone is stuck in the center and being very self-centered, self-absorbed as a leader, you know, my analogy for that is our body. Because if you look at our body, it all functions well, it's all harmonious, all organs respond to each other. There's only one case when they are not. And that's what we can call a cancer cell. Because what happens to a cancer cell is that it's losing its recognition and it just starts to proliferate and grow for itself. And then it creates a tumor and eventually it can annihilate the whole body. So usually things work in our body and in organizations. They should work really smooth and in cooperation and connection. But I see a lot of leaders being stuck in the center. Being stuck in the center would mean to me losing sight of a larger context, losing sight of what leadership is. I would like to say leadership is about your people. It's not about you. Leadership is about people. It's not about you. You can be a vehicle for it. You can enact it, but it's about people. It's not about you. I think this creates a lot of disconnection in organizations where leaders are very self-focused. And I think it leads to a lot of frictions and battles. And this is what I've seen recently in a lot of the coaching of leaders that I do. Lots of battles, lots of frictions, lots of non-cooperation. And I think this deserves a good level of work by itself. It's to reposition leaders as the heart of their transformation in their own self-development, but also in what leadership is, and about empowering people, growing people, allowing growth around them. So I'd like to share with you, as an example, the story of George. George is a person I worked with. He was the head of a unit of R&D was very ambitious, he wanted to be promoted. And so he decided to create all kinds of features to the IT company that he worked in. And he exerted huge pressure on his people. And the main reason, again, the main cause was his own promotion. This went on for over a year. And following this year, what happened is that the team got burnt out from this overpressure and overambition. Those people who could leave left. What they created was not aligned with the organization, so it created a lot of losses to the organizations. Customers were not happy with this line of work because no one ever asked them if that's what they need or want. Eventually, this team was lost. George lost his job. There was a lot of organizational damage, and even his manager had to resign. So this is a story of someone very self-focused as a leader, which caused significant damage around them. So I think when you work with leaders and you meet this kind of George people, the big question is, so what do you do with them? What do you do with these kind of people? How can you change this very, very core element in their leadership? And I'd like just to show you some of the work we do with leaders in that area. And it's deeper work. It's beyond the basic compass of 4 directions navigation. And we find that to help leaders transform, this is some type of work that we need to do with them. So one is to help them to zoom out from only self-focus. Okay? To pause and zoom out from only self-focus. Second is to help them remember the larger context of what they do. Again, I think leaders who are, I think someone needs to close their microphone. Thank you. As you can see, the word is remember, to become again a member of a larger context, of the whole organization, the whole society, the whole market. What do you actually contribute? It's to connect to greater meaning of what you do, again, beyond self-focus and self-promotion. We do a lot of work with leaders to try to understand their stakeholders' needs, because most leaders ask, what do I need? And the work we do with them is to think their various stakeholders, their team, their partners, their bosses, what do they need? And how well do we answer that need? Because this type of work really creates deeper connection and is not being stuck in the center, but the opposite, is being connected to a larger context. And I resonate with Walter a lot. I think the idea of being people growth-centric is really something we can encourage currently in the world, because a lot of leadership is still stuck not in that direction of letting people grow, empowering people, bringing people to be more of what they can be, but only in bottom line, only in self-promotion. And I think this is great work that can be done now with people. So to end this first part of this transmission, I'd like to say that when leaders are stuck in the center, a much deeper transformational work is needed. And we are here genuinely to help transform people and organizations and help growth. And I think this is another aspect beyond the compass with its 4 direction that we work with. And we do a very successful work with hundreds of organizations and thousands of leaders. I think it's time sometimes to look a bit deeper into the idea that leaders might be stuck at the center, which has dual meaning, both stuck in their self-centeredness, but stuck in the center of what leadership is for them. And I think if you look at the world, it's really time to invest in leadership, because this is where change can be, and this is, I believe, where we can assist the most. So with this, I'd like to end the first part. Thank you, Nir. This is the end of the live transmission. And now we are here with our friends. Hello, Regina and Lyra. I didn't see you before. And Leslie. Wow, great to see you. So now we are back to us, the N.E.W.S network. So first, before doing some discussions, can I ask you, how do you respond to this kind of message? Or this kind, it was an article, now it's a message. Any response from you? Ivana Skiba, great. This is short and to the point, Ivana. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Aviad, I thank you to start. I believe this profound analysis of what's going on and what we have been doing before give us a new way to go deeper in what we do. And the work